Rob Smuts, we're on Woodward Avenue 5 days after the storm, and there's a payloader dumping huge mounds of snow into waiting trucks. Yeah. Would this have been different if we were in Syracuse?
Yeah, the equipment that we have is very different from the cities north of us that get a lot more snow. We got 34 inches, as everyone knows, the most we've ever gotten in New Haven, at least in the last 100 years. And we're not equipped to handle that type of storm when it's falling. And so what we have to do is post-storm, and we see it this storm, we saw it in January 2011, we have to bring in equipment like payloaders and all this line of triaxles and roll-off trucks to haul the snow away, to actually dig it up and haul it away. Now in some of these other cities, they have equipment like this on hand for picking up snow, hauling it away. They also have different equipment for during the storm. And so to give you an example, so our big Class A plow trucks will have a capacity to push snow maybe about this high, a little less than 3 feet, a snow drift, a snow bank on the side of the road. More than that, it really strains their capacity. So what you see in other places, and actually the ConDOT has this for the highway, they'll have a lead plow truck come with a wing plow that is off the ground, that's maybe about 3 feet off the ground, that plows the top of a really tall snowbank, and then they'll have truck come behind it. Some even have a secondary wing, and it's called creating a snow shelf. And then you have the plow that comes after that and plows the now shortened snow drift. That
would happen, so they could handle it if we had 8 inches in 2.5 hours come down with 55 miles an hour wind. That piece of equipment in Syracuse could have come to Woodward Avenue if we had it and not have all this buildup?
So, no, that piece of equipment would be able to do better digging out afterwards. For 8 inches in 2 hours, that's a lot even for Syracuse or for Watertown, New York. But the equipment they do have for that, there are 2 pieces. They'll have more payloaders on hand. We only have 4 in the city, 2 in Public Works, 2 in Parks. They'd have more of them. And they actually have big snowblower attachments on these things in some cases, or they'll have just more payloaders. Another thing they'll do is on their big Class 8 trucks, they'll have, it's like a V plow. And it's a big thing, and it ends up being several feet high, and that's just to create a path down the middle. Our plows are more flat, and you can put them at a little angle, but when you have too much snow in front of them, even when they're on an angle, they can't keep going. And so we had a lot of plow trucks get stuck in the storm. If you have one that's really pointed, picture, what you might think about like an old-time locomotive plow look like. It's a pointed V in front.
So if we had those kind of plows that have in Syracuse, we wouldn't have gotten stuck as much that night.
During that night, we would have been able to keep open more key travel lanes if we were equipped with that.
How much would it cost us to get those kind of trucks?
Well, it depends. So another thing is how many we have. We have about 225 miles of road in the city. Probably about 400, 500 travel lane miles of road in the city. And when you conclude parking lanes and all that stuff, you're probably getting up 900 miles of lane length in the city. To equip enough equipment to be able to do all of that would be a huge cost. What you might do is you might have some equipment so that you can handle some of the more arterials during a storm like that, have them on hand. And that's something that when we do our after-action reports and really get a handle on what climate change means for us, that's something that we might have to start thinking about. Okay,
so bottom line, we're on Woodward Avenue on the 5th day of the storm, after the storm. If this were Syracuse, we had those 2 sets of different equipment, the locomotive-shaped plows and the other snowblower attachments, bigger trucks. What would have been happening here on the 5th day?
5th day we might have already, so right now on Woodward we're widening the road here. We're trying to do this on arterials, really get as much curb to curb as we can, and in neighborhoods do clearance on the odd side, so at least it's particularly the 2-lane roads in the neighborhoods. know, what would happen in some of those more northerly cities is we would have had the equipment to open up the roads probably a little quicker. You know, what happened when we got the 26 payloaders in is what they would have had the equipment right from the get-go to be doing and do through the storm.
So might this have been a widely plowed streak by Sunday in Syracuse?
By Sunday, it probably wouldn't have looked like this even in Syracuse.
So maybe they would have had Tuesday and we would have had Thursday?
I mean, they'd be ahead of our schedule. I don't know how far. But the key difference is during the storm. So during the storm, get back to that. When we had that 8 inches in 2 hours, we pulled our plow trucks off their routes because we had 15 ambulances stuck, 9 fire engines stuck, 27 police vehicles stuck. And when you have an ambulance with a patient in it, that's what your plow truck does, you know, if they can. And then we had plow trucks get stuck. And so one of the big differences is if we had different equipment during the storm itself. And again, 8 inches in 2 hours is a lot, even for cities like Syracuse or Watertown. But we would have had some to at least keep the trunk roads open in the city.